This video is a partial response to Elon's tweets, where he said that um, money doesn't buy happiness, and whoever said that was onto something. I'm going to link it here so you can see it. I was already about to shoot this video when he tweeted it, and I thought, wow, nice of him to actually discuss. You know, the universe is telling me something. Clock it. There's a movie on Netflix called Materialist. If you haven't seen it, it's about a high-flying matchmaking agent. Her name is Lucy. In spite of how good she is at profiling people for compatibility, Lucy is in debt. The movie is about romance, love, the whole shebang. I'm going to try not to spoil it for you, but you should still see it, even if I end up spoiling it for you. You can make me that. Now, I bring up this movie because even though much of the theme is about falling in love, dating, a lot of it is centered on the subject of money. And this video is about money and the concepts and conversations that we have around it. In the movie, one of the most required traits for women seeking partners is a comfortable salary. And before you think, it's women, some of them are gold diggers, it's actually more of basic survival math. I mean, when you have very little, you want someone who complements it or at the very least upgrades it. So back to the main character, Lucy. As someone who is drowning in student loan debt, I expect her to make the smart decision of finding a more financially stable partner. I mean, this is literally her job to help women find partners that complement them. This is somebody who practically leaves her home for the weekend when she's on a work trip just to make ends meet. And boom, by some stroke of luck, life throws her a lifeline. She bags a man that ticks all the boxes that women want, someone they even call a unicorn, without putting in any effort. At this point, the story is starting to look like the perfect love story. He's tall, kind, handsome, attracted to her, and more importantly, he can and is willing to solve her financial problems, which can be mutually explosive. You can meet somebody who has the money, but they don't want to spend it on you. What does she do? She declines. Instead, she dumps him for her broke ex-boyfriend, who she previously broke up with because they constantly fought about money.
However much you hate me, I promise I hate myself more.
I don't hate you.
You do. And it's not because we're not in love. It's because we're broke.
And the shocking thing about her decision is not that she goes back to her ex-boyfriend, is that he is still very broke when she goes back to him. Which means that the situation that even precipitated that breakup before is still very much prevalent. And she decides to make this decision to go back and wing it, broke person to broke person. Doesn't make sense. And Hollywood loves this narrative where a noble poor person gives up money for love. And I like it. It's beautiful. We love love over here. I mean, it makes a statement that we're not all materialists, even though the title of the movie suggests otherwise. But if we're being real, that story is unrealistic. The movie does not tell you what happens 6 months later. It doesn't show you the next fight that's about money. It doesn't show you how their next can we afford to have kids conversation goes. It doesn't show you what happens when one of them gets sick and their nasally double income suddenly becomes one miserly income. Anyways, the movie ends like every romance movie, while real life continues with consequences. Elon lives in America where a lot of people live from paycheck to paycheck, and America is a country where you have 1 in every 10 adults as a millionaire. That is the highest concentration of wealth in the world. Yet we have people worrying about their basic needs in the same geographical location. If you read Dan Cole's Purpose and Profits book that I mentioned in my last video, you know that the title of this video was poached from a chapter in that book. And the reason the unignorability of money chapter title stuck with me is because it perfectly captures something that we all know, but some people tend to gloss over, which is that you cannot ignore money when you don't have enough of it. For many people, money is the barrier between their current life and the life of their dreams. And by the life of their dreams, I'm not talking about the dreams of becoming a billionaire We're talking about the dream of not feeding your heart, race faster or skip a beat when you have an extra bill to pay and you have to look at your bank account. So you don't even need to look at your bank account so you can afford it. That is the dream of being able to say yes when your friends say, can we go out? And you don't have to do mental mathematics to actually know if you can afford it. The dream of choosing a career that's based on your passions and not because the field is offering more salary or benefits. I mean, in this economy, most people's reality is working overtime, working 3 jobs, having side hustles, having business that they have no business starting. And even at the extreme end, we have people investing their survival money, hoping that it will gain something extra before it's time for them to use it. And unfortunately, only a lucky few of us will ever achieve the freedom of never having to worry about money. So this video is about broaching the topic of how we know what money is, we know the power that it holds and the potential that it has to transform realities, yet somehow wanting it is demonized. In my experience, and as someone who doesn't shy away from having money conversations, I found that the people who vilify anyone chasing money or chasing paper is usually either those who have cultivated contentment as a spiritual practice or those who already have money. Now, I would like to talk about contentment for a minute because contentment means you're happy with where you are. And if life gives you more, you just see it as a plus. It doesn't, cause a problem for you, which is beautiful. But my question about contentment is if it is always genuine or it's just a story we tell ourselves when we stop believing that our situation can change. There is a famous Aesop fable about a fox, where a fox that is hungry tries to reach for some grapes that's hanging very high on the vine, but it's unable to, in spite of how much he leaps and uses his strength. And eventually he walks away and says, they weren't about right. I didn't want sour grapes. And psychologists call this phenomenon sour grapes. It's a cognitive defense mechanism where you convince yourself you never wanted something because you couldn't have it. A form of psychological cushioning to take away from the pain of not having achieved your goal or gotten what you wanted. And this is not to say that contentment is always fake. I know that for some people, it's a hard-won, conscious decision to find joy in any situation. But really and truly, for many people, it might be a resignation coping tactics. And still on the subject of contentment, ambitious people like Elon Musk are never contented. If not, he would not have sought $1 trillion from Tesla as his pay package just last year, in spite of being the richest man in the world. So this might give you an insight on why he's still not happy with all that money. And even though this might be seen as a vice, ambition is what has driven most of our larger-than-life innovations and discoveries as a species. So it still has a place on the good side of virtues, because every technological breakthrough came from someone who ignored the reality and said, I want more than what life and reality are currently offering. So I believe that wanting more can actually be morally balanced by being grateful and ambitious at the same time. You can appreciate what you have while at the same time you're working towards more. And I know that much of the negative connotations money has in society have religious undertones, with Bible passages like money is the root of evil, which is not even actually true. The actual quote says that it is the love of money that is the root of all evil, yet it keeps being misquoted. So we've been culturally conditioned to believe that wanting money makes you morally suspect, but people don't ask morally suspect compared to what? Compared to staying in poverty, compared to being unable to take care of your family, compared to being one child emergency away from being homeless. I personally would actually like to have my financial worries wiped away. And I know that there's any financially challenged person in the world that would do what's the same. Which is why I like the phrase, the unignorability of money, because it captures all the ways that money can change your priorities, alter your reality, cushion your lived experience, and mark what you deem important. So in the movie Materialist, if Lucy's broke boyfriend was somewhat comfortable, her choice wouldn't have created the tension that it did in the movie. And it probably wouldn't have had the same effect it had on me. So the key insight I'm taking away from this example is that when you don't have money, it becomes the lens through which you view every decision. And nobody can actually blame you for that because survival is brutal and survival in today's world somehow depends on money because, money makes the world go around. But before I wrap up, I want to further portray the unignorability of money by referencing Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The pyramid that illustrates how you can't worry about self-actualization or mental health if you don't have food and shelter, which are the basics. There's a money version of it, and there are also levels as well. And level 1 is where you have survival money. This is rent, food, basic utilities, emergency health care. If your income then covers this level, that means money occupies 90% of your mental space, and it doesn't leave room for much else because you're doing permutations and combinations every other month, trying to make that your little income stretch and cover your bills. So when somebody comes and tells you that money doesn't buy happiness at this stage, it's kind of like pisses you off. The second level of money is where you have security money. At this level, you have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved. When you reach this level, money occupies less of your mental space, but you're still acutely aware of your limitations because you can't just quit your job if it's toxic. You can't take big risks. You're stable, but at the same time, you're not free. Then there's the third level of money, which is the freedom of fucking money, which is the upgrade. This is where you actually have real options. You can leave your job if you hate it. You can take a month off without, being financially ruined. You can literally say no to things that don't serve you. At this level, money is not controlling your every decision. And the next level, which is the fourth level, is where you have mini money. This is where you have enough that you can focus primarily on your contribution to humanity, your creativity, your legacy, and your impact. Here, your decisions are not based on economics, they're based on your values. And at this level, money occupies maybe 3 to 10% of your mental space, depending on how greedy you are. Because you can actually you can still pay attention to money, but it's no longer the determining factor in major decisions of your life. It's also important to note that it's only when you get to the level 3, which is the money, or the level 4, which is the minimum, that you can genuinely say that money can't buy happiness, because then money has not the power to contribute to your happiness. It is only when you pass into those levels that you are now free to pursue the kind of happiness that money cannot buy. Which is why, before you get to that level, somebody saying that money cannot buy happiness is extremely infuriating. I mean, we, the pre-rich, we are aware that money doesn't buy happiness. It's the truth, it doesn't buy happiness. So saying it is like telling someone who is having that food is not going to solve all of the problems. They know that food will not solve all of their problems, but they have a food problem and it's one of my favorite quotes, again from the Unignorability Money chapter of Dan's book, says that when you live in a stressful cloud of never-ending responsibilities that can be solved by money, you cannot be aware of the debt that life has to cover. Let me reiterate, say it out loud. You cannot be aware of the depth that life has to offer when you live in a stressful cloud of responsibilities that money can't solve. I mean, you would know that there's beauty, there's complexity, there's meaning, there are profound experiences in this world, but you're cut off from those because your mental resources are constantly being deployed on the survival and paying bills front of life. At the stage of your life, you can't enjoy the sunset because you're already in traffic by 5 a.m. or your day commutes to work. You find it difficult to maintain friendships because you're working 3 jobs just to stay afloat. Financial stress is literally your reality, and it blocks your awareness of the beauty in living and the beauty of appreciating life. So what can you do? If you're watching this video, there's a good chance, a very slim chance, but still a good chance that you're somewhere between the survivor and the fuck you level of the money hierarchy. The level where you are making it work, but it's still kind of tight. So what I would say that you should do is to, first of all, give yourself permission to want more, because you cannot be content with having money problems and at the same time actively search for how to end these problems. The second step would be to give your financial freedom a number. Don't just say, I want to be rich. Say, I want so and so amount in a month to cover my needs and at least give me breathing room to enjoy life, to experience life. Or to say, I need this amount saved to feel secure. For me, that number is 6 months of living expenses plus 7.5 million naira in savings, which is around $5,000. And there's a backstory to how I arrived at my own figure. If you stick around, maybe before the end of 2026, you'll hear the story. And afterwards, you can build skills that increase your income. I mean, even at billions of dollars in net worth, Elon is still hustling like he's in his pre-age era. And besides, work gives you purpose. So try to increase your income and at the same time, try not to burn yourself out. And one of the ways you can do that is to develop skills that are strategic to where you are in life. You can still work the same number of hours and earn more because you've increased your value in the marketplace. So finally, when you hit those milestones, don't let greed take you on the hedonic treadmill of perpetual dissatisfaction, because doing that, not being satisfied with where you are, where you've gotten to, would actually make the statement that money does not buy happiness or keep happiness true for you in your life. So the goal is to be financially free. It's not to accumulate wealth for the sake of it. And with that being said, I hope to see you at the